Well, all righty. Hello, everyone. We are now at the fun part of the day, and that is when we have our customer panel. And I am really pleased to indicate we have a very exciting panel. I'm Michael Nixon, VP of Product Marketing with SnapLogic, and we have a few hot shots who are joining us for the customer panel. Always, as I say, audience favorite. And so let's kick things off by me first explaining the title of the session, and so therefore the theme for everyone, how automation has transformed the way of work. And so why don't we get the ball rolling right away and have each of our esteemed guest panelists introduce themselves.
I'm Karen Craig. I'm the Director of Enterprise Business Systems for WD-40 Company, and I am super excited to be here and thank you for the invite.
I'm Brian Murphy. I'm the head of data at Aramark, and yeah, I'm always excited to come to these events and share best practices.
Hi, and I'm Jonathan Howes. I'm the head of HRES, which is HR Enabling Service, product management at Sony.
Great. So, quick thing, let me recognize Brian. Brian, I think this is your second time around, second annual participant of our panel. So that's great. So that means you're a veteran.
Yeah, hopefully I'll bore people.
All right, so to the audience. Okay, we invited back. All right, so to our audience who are listening in, first of all, thank you for all of you for sticking around towards the end to engage in conversation. And that's what this is about. It's a conversation. We have some prepared questions, but we are encouraging questions from the audience. So don't hesitate to get your questions in. We will have a person on my team. Her name is Karen, who's always behind the scenes working very hard on these things to make it a success. So she may feed me questions. And so with that, I am just going to kick things off with automation being the theme here. Here's our first question to get the conversation going. So how do you see automation as an important driver into the future? So let's see, who would I want to go to for this one? Kara, you've got a big smile. You were anxious to answer this one, perhaps?
I always have a big smile. So really, I think it's all about enablement. I think it's about low code, no code. And I know my friend Jonathan would agree with me on the business side. We in IT always want to enable our business users. And the more they can do, the more self-service they can do for themselves, the better off we all are holistically as a company. So I think your product delivers a unique solution to a lot of companies who don't want to bring in a huge dev team, right? That has a specific skill set that is costly, right?
Right.
And can sometimes slow down the speed of delivery. So with that, I know Jonathan, I'm sure Jonathan will want to add on to that because his team has become hugely successful because of his vision for this.
We're all on a journey, right?
Right.
No, I think within our team, there are two things around automation that we're really focused on. And one is about how can we introduce some operational stability, predictability. And in that case, we're really talking about automating things like data quality checks, regression testing, certain pieces of deployment as we go from one, a development environment to a production environment. Are there ways we can do data quality checks and validation before we make that final move into production? And we're learning there's a good portion of this we can use SnapLogic for, which was a big surprise for us on this journey. The other thing that I think we're really leveraging the platform for when it comes to the automation is when we're synchronizing data between different systems, typically, especially since the HR space, there have been a lot of manual transactions that our sort of delivery front end folks have had to do. What we're doing now is being able to rebuild the business logic flows in SnapLogic pipelines to automate all of that with some pretty sophisticated business logic, applying our policies to to the data flows, and then using API connections on the back end to automatically trigger the updates within the downstream systems, including all of the triggering those business processes and things and having them complete without any human intervention. This has been a huge time saver for us and an opportunity for us to focus on less tactical, low value work and really focus on more strategic activities.
Right. So that's good to hear. And by the way, I know that all of you are great SnapLogic users and customers, but your industry perspective is just as valued here in this particular forum. So if you have something you want to throw in terms of your thoughts and your wisdom, we're always happy to hear that as well. So given that you sort of introduced the concept of systems here, Jonathan, why don't I sort of get technical and ask all of you, tell us about your unique data platform and integration challenges and the role enterprise automation has played to address those challenges. So to some extent, Jonathan, you've already alluded to it, so you got ahead of everyone else, but let's hear some of the system aspects from either Carrie or Brian.
Yeah, I can jump in here, and I'm going to go back to the automation side. So I honestly think it's vital to business survival today, because at the end of the day, data is the fuel of running our business. I mean, our business partners may not think so, but I think in every conversation you have today, most of your business are through some transactions, and how you automate that and facilitate it through the various pipelines and breaking down the information silos, and then thinking about like breaking the mold of the more traditional data integration patterns into more real-time streaming type of microservices. And SnapLogic was a huge benefit to us in order to break down those data silos and making information accessible to help fuel the automation and AI, and how can you actually take a transaction through the overall pipeline and make it and perform the business value.
Right. Well, thank you for that, Brian. Anything more you'd like to add to that, Carrie, perhaps?
Yeah, so at WD-40 Company, we use SnapLogic to be able to do a point-to-point solution between our front office and our back office. So I would use this example is Amazon, one of our biggest customers, will do a bulk buy, a quarterly bulk buy, which will traditionally throw them over their credit limit, and all their orders will go on hold. Why is it that IT is delivering the message to finance that we need to increase the credit limit for Amazon? Because the sales force really had no idea this was happening. But when you expose that data from the ERP system to the CRM system, their system of use, then they have a better ability to service their own customers, which is their job, right?
Right. Absolutely.
They can't do that without the data. And then traditionally, right, if we use traditional ways of moving data, we're still forced a lot of times from an IT perspective to provide day-old data to our users. Mm-hmm. That's not a scenario where day-old data is efficient. If my biggest customer is Amazon and they did a bulk buy that threw them over their credit limit by $2.5 million, wouldn't I want to know that as their customer service rep right away? So
absolutely, you would.
Yeah, in this case for us, I think being able to provide real-time data in two systems, point to point, provides efficiencies for our business users that they wouldn't get in a traditional integration platform.
So that real-time aspect was an important criteria. All right, great. So let's take it to another question. So I have this prepared question, and it's how has automation impacted the way employees in your organization work? Now, I know a couple of you have already hinted about not having to, say in your case, Carrie, have developers, and Jonathan, you talked about the empowerment of people. So anything more specific you'd like to say in terms of how it has actually impacted people within your organization?
I'm going to push Jonathan to answer a little bit. You guys, he's the head of HR. And what's important to us as employees, right, is our own personal data. So the fact that he's been able to globalize his system internally, I think, is hugely beneficial to all of his employees.
Yes. So what say you, Jonathan?
Well, one clarification. I'm not the head of HR, but I do own the global HR system. Two very different things. But nevertheless, I think that one of the things that we've been able to see is that these tools are letting us get our subject matter experts closer to the data and actually start to do interesting things with them. Whether that's in terms of integration and having people who understand the data, the context, and also if we're dealing with the third party vendor, say, that's providing external services, knowing what it is that they need. That's very different than spending a tremendous amount of time writing up requirements for very capable, well-trained IT folks who are doing development but don't have the business context. So
Right.
it speeds up our time to market for some of these specific things that we're working on, and it also improves the quality of the things that they're delivering. So I think that being able to bring that down to the subject matter experts is something that brings us a tremendous amount of value. I think if we're again looking at automation, that it is equally as important when it comes to the integration side as it is in some of the areas that the other two have mentioned around analytics and getting some insight into the data, and being able to merge multiple sources or do the transformation that you need to get it into the output that your analytics platform or dashboards, whatever it may happen to be, is equally as valuable. So I think that if I go back, many years ago when we all started working with, our application architecture, you always had the data in a completely different layer from the presentation and where the users would see it.
That's
And
right.
now these tools are actually allowing the users who understand it to work directly with the data in a meaningful way. And as a result, your time to value, I will say that, which sounds like a terrible consulting phrase, but it really is reduced. And you can start doing more with it hands-on right away.
And I guess I would actually argue, or I would enlighten everyone to say, I don't think we eliminated just one person out of that equation. I think we eliminated two. So traditionally, when you talk about software development, there's normally two IT folks in the mix. There's a developer, right? Or an engineer, and then there's a business analyst that has to translate. Mm-hmm. So really what you've done is when Jonathan talks about simplifying it, you've simplified it to eliminate two people from the equation instead of just one.
I'm going to get
Brian, I'll come back to that point, but Brian, it sounds like there was a point you wanted to get in there.
Yeah, I think it empowers you to unlock the information and transform what would traditionally be considered an IT product into, a data product that can be leveraged and consumed in a number of different ways, whether it's a business consumer or a development team that can then take that data product and do a number of different ways, whether it's a mobile app, a text message. So by being able to transform your data assets into individual data products of value, it just unlocks so much more capability and speed. And I think the speed to value, although you said that is more of a consulting term, it's very important in this day and age. Speed to market is key.
I hear that over and over. Business acceleration, being able to deploy quickly, being able to get returns quickly. So acceleration, time to value comes up often, very often in conversation.
And one thing that you just said about it, making a data product, and that is a very different thing than we used to have, right? It's something that is now a consumable by the business where they can have value for whatever their business process may be. I want to be careful and we're not undermining the value of traditional IT. There are plenty of business functions that we need to have hardcore developers and old school integrations and things for when it comes to authentication and that just transport and moving data from other systems. But I really like, Mark, where you said that data product that is specific to a business user, that's where we're finding more focus in terms of what we're producing. I mean, it's no accident that my team is called product management, even though we're dealing with HR technology, because we're trying to package up stuff that people can use.
Mm-hmm. Right. Great, great. So let me just take a quick little diversion here. Just remind individuals who are listening in, if you have questions, get your questions in. I mean, what better time to have access to experts who could perhaps give you their perspective on your question, deployment questions, and what have you, and other considerations. So just want to get a reminder to get your questions in. All righty. So I thought that was a good round of discussion. So moving on, how and yet again, Jonathan, you found yourself setting up another question. I don't know how you do this. You're just like magical about that. So how have you handled the constant tug of war between business and IT? So maybe in your case, Jonathan, it's not so much a tug of war, but how do you manage that?
I think initially it wasn't a tug of war. It was, what are you doing on our playground? I mean, that's really how it started. Without going in too deep into the history, the organization I'm in was sort of an upstart. We had this initiative as part of a global HR digital transformation effort to set up this this global service that was dealing with both the IT organizations and local companies within each country. And we had, over 90 different companies, all Sony companies, of course, across 60 odd different countries. And so it was a negotiation about, well, what are you guys doing here? And why should we let you trust you with this data to begin with? And so we started out with some small proof of concept to show where we could be introducing specific value within this HR domain, which upheld our very strict guidelines around data protection, data privacy, keeping the HR, secret level data contained and well governed and under control. And we were able to demonstrate that, we're pretty good stewards of this with the right tools. And so I think that by taking small steps to establish some credibility, we could carve out our own space. And we have a boundary around our sandbox. And so we're not going to step outside of it. We can handshake, we can partner. We know when you guys know far better what you're doing than we do. But in this space, we're pretty good at what we do. And we are the subject matter experts. We know the domain. We have the relationship with the business stakeholders. And that's where we're going to play, which is always a frustration, when I'm talking to the SnapLogic sales account who wants me to expand our services. I'm like, no, I'm right here. I'm in this space, and this is where we have really the most value that we can deliver within the company. And so I don't care if the IT organization is using 5 other integration platforms for different things or in different geographies. In my space, this tool gives and the platform around it allows us to play again without having that battle about domain with the global IT organization.
Yeah, I mean, who's heard of that? Engaging with a department outside of yours, getting territorial? I mean, that has never happened, right?
Well, so I'm actually on the tech side. But I will say that it's unavoidable, right? And
That's right.
we actually embraced it and created the concept of a citizen integrator.
Right.
It actually carved out an area in our environment for those business stakeholders to be able to, take their various data sets and then merge it with other type of trusted data to actually create some outputs. Now you have to set some standards and some guidelines, because there's some data that you don't want everybody to have access to.
That's right. That's right.
But you have to embrace it. You have to partner on it, because at the end of the day, it's going to happen. And if you don't embrace it, then basically what you have is a technology silo that you're ending up dealing with anyway eventually.
Right. So Brian, this time you get the winner award for setting up the next question, because the next one was actually going to be about decentralizing integration and getting your respective views on it. And so I'll take your answer as pretty much addressing that question. I feel you made it pretty clear how you feel about it. And by the way, just for the record, I mean, even though we talk about empowering business users from a SnapLogic platform, we're pro IT, we're pro business. We see it as unity. So there's nothing but love for both IT and business groups from our perspective. And in fact, we got a question in directed at Brian, and it says, Aramark, how many business units are you giving data access to these end users within those units, or maybe the number of end users within those units? You know, any examples? I think you kind of quoted the example, but it looks like this individual might be looking for some numbers to what you're saying. So in other words, how far is your decentralization reaching?
So we just began a journey around the citizen integrator, but all our lines of businesses are using it. If you're familiar with Aramark, you know, from our hospitality services and uniform services and facility services. So, you know, all our lines of businesses are using it. There's various types of skill sets in those lines of business, from data analysts to more casual business owners. But, you know, when I talked about setting up data as a product, what we have done is created data products like microservices that can be used in a variety of different ways for applications integrations, external vendor implementation. When we productized it, we also branded it. So we've gotten to the point where we go to and we have meetings and conversations with our business owners, and a lot of times between tech and business, they talk in acronyms and databases and all that fun stuff. Where now we just basically talk about the product and what are the domains and what's the functions we're trying to do and enable. And then we decide, okay, how are we going to enable that? Is that going to be a tech initiative, or are they just going to consume it and take it to the next step?
Right. I get that. It makes a lot of sense. It feels like the conversation is being up leveled.
Yeah. And we've actually, I don't say we've come up with the term, but I'm seeing it. I felt like we came up with it about 2 years back, and I see it a lot more in a lot of literature. You know, we basically say we got to free the data.
Free the data.
And I talk about unlocking the data, but really the data is an asset, but it's only an asset if it can be used. So if you can't free the data that can be leveraged by your business stakeholders or other solutions, then you failed. All you do is have this big data set or a lot of data that you can control, but what type of business value does it offer?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Great.
I actually want
additional
to chime
comments
in
on
here.
that?
Well, I want to chime in.
Go for it. Yes, please.
I want to make clear that I am on the technology side. And I freely think that business users should be enabled. I 100% believe in partnering with them. So maybe I'm unique in the fact that I've always been in orgs where I've had leaders who have been proactive with the partnership. So before we do strategic planning on an IT side, right, we're reaching out to our business users and saying, what's important to you? What initiatives do you have? What do you need from us? And sometimes it's, I need your help. And sometimes it's, I need your support. And sometimes it's, I just need your governance, right? Like maybe Sony does. I need you to know I'm doing these things. But communication is the key in all of this. And then because I'm on the app side, I'll tell you, I totally agree, is the main reason you put data into an app is so that you can get it out and use it to your benefit. So the more people that are able to get it out and use it to their benefit and their specifications the way they want to, the better off we all are.
Absolutely.
And I think SnapLogic enables us to reach more people.
Good. Oh, so Carrie, now you win the setup award, because the next question is, what unique challenges have you found that SnapLogic or SnapLogic iPaaS platform has helped you with? So maybe I'll take that as the answer from Carrie, unless you want to expand. But if not, maybe Jonathan or Brian, what unique thing did we bring to the table? I think you inferred it through a few of your responses thus far, but if you can speak to it directly, that would be great.
Which one were you asking that question?
Oh, all right. I was leaving it open to whoever wanted to jump in first, but I'll look at you, Brian. So again, the question was, what unique challenges have you found that the SnapLogic iPaaS platform has helped you with?
Well, we already used the term speed to market. So you're able to, we were able to stand up an environment in a very quick manner of time and create this mesh data platform. And starting it off, and we really like to talk about from months to days, but we literally did it, right? So we started to create these data products. They were being leveraged and used, and we've continued to build out on these capabilities and providing transparency, access to information in a number of different ways. If you're familiar with Aramark at all, I always sit there and go, if you go to one of our food service operations, the person that's running around the most is the person managing the account. And that person's not sitting in front of a computer. The only computer they have is usually a mobile device. So, our focus is how do we make that information available to them that's actionable, so that at the right time. So having something that's from yesterday is informational, but it's not actionable. So, what's available today? What do I need to do? How do I service our clients? And by leveraging a platform like SnapLogic, that is an iPaaS platform that allows me to access data in a hybrid manner, whether it's sitting in our data centers, sitting in one of our clouds, or in a vendor's cloud. It just makes the information more accessible.
Great. Anything more, Jonathan?
When I think about unique capability, which I think was the question, right?
Yes, that is correct.
I think for us, again, we're sitting in a slightly different space than the other two, given that we are managing this discrete set of data. To make it clear, I always say we own the worker data and we hand user data off to IT. That's where the distinction is. And then when anything you're going to do with workers, is where we tend to play. But for us, the thing that was the big surprise for us is, when we first started on the platform, we looked at the SnapLogic pipelines. It's just the transformation part of ETL. Bring in data, do some change on it, and kick it out to some other integration somewhere. And it was really about formatting, mapping, or doing some kind of calculation. What we learned as we started playing with the tool was that, especially as we started exploring APIs and the API into Workday, our primary HR system, is that we can do a significant amount of business logic in the pipeline, which has allowed us to take, when we're bringing something in from one system and having to do a synchronization with another. Typically, that's been someone going, historically, they were going in, looking at data, keying in changes from one system to the other, doing the transaction, closing it out, and they're done. But now we can, just by applying taking the policies that we have and translating those policies into business logic in a pipeline, we can now automate by doing a comparison from one day to the next, seeing what's happening in the system, and automatically doing all of those transactions in the HR system without anyone ever touching it. And it includes far better validation, data quality checks, and turnaround time that we could never do from a manual side. And so I think for us, that unique capability was really around the being able to build out that business, the intelligent business logic, using the APIs, driving automated transactions to a number of different systems that really freed us up from mundane data quality manual tasks and to focus on more interesting work.
Right. Well, one of our listeners wanted to ask a question directed to you, Jonathan. How does SnapLogic help you keep up with data governance as you expand support to 90 plus entities around the world?
Well, so we started out, it's a little bit different for us. We started out as we were rolling out this transformation project. We had three key objectives. First was to harmonization, come to an agreement about how we're going to define terms, what kind of business methodology or process are we going to have when it comes to things like global job grades, or how we look at performance rankings, or do for vacation days. I know that sounds silly, but when we're going across so many different cultures and ways of working, just harmonizing on our language and the way we think about it was an important first step. And we landed on, certainly more important questions than just what do you call time off, but we landed in operationally on how we were going to be managing the workforce globally. And then the second piece of that was selecting the system, and we went with a software as a service, which I'm always a big fan of. That's why I looked at an integration platform as a service. And we landed on Workday, did our implementation, and have that in place. The third piece of that project was to set up a global organization separate from all of those other companies that could manage, run it, do the stakeholder engagement, do the development, day-to-day operations, keep things up and running. So as a part of that project, the data governance and management of policies and compliance was something that we set up. So while that wasn't a consideration for us in terms of something we had to create brand new when looking at SnapLogic, it was very attractive to us that we could take our security policies from Workday, and thanks again to the API, we can pull those in and apply those in SnapLogic, meaning that if we're providing data to someone, depending on their rules about their organization, their location, their role, things we're pulling from the HR system, we can apply those same controls directly in SnapLogic using an integration without having to recreate it. I'm not sure that answers the question fully around governance, because that's a very complex topic when we're looking at all of those different countries. It is. But it is something that we've been able to leverage in terms of applying the investment we made in the initial setup of the organization. But I will say, we do have one person whose full-time job is keeping workers' councils happy, working across all of those different groups, staying up on the different rules, and making sure that we're deploying, what we're delivering in the right way.
All right, it's great. So thanks for providing that. Looking at you here, Brian, I know you've cited before in different conversations we've had about some of the volume of APIs you've supported through your environment. Would you like to share with the audience some of that detail?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I talked about the speed to market, but we started our journey about 4 years ago. Within, let's say, 6 months, we had over 50 APIs, which are the products. And then, as we got into COVID, our goal for 2020 was to hit 100 million transactions going through our pipelines, because it's not necessarily like from what I'm understanding, the other partners, they're really, or the other folks they're doing more traditional data transformations and loads, which is a lot of volume, and we do some of that too. But when I'm talking about what an API we're doing, it's a request response. So it's a consumer asking for information or an application doing it. So we were happy to say that we've exceeded 100 million transactions this year, even as we're starting to open up back the business. And now that we're starting to get up to decent levels as companies are opening, we expect to double that this year. And then we're continuously building up on our product domain. So we're also implementing a new HR system today. And that's also a consumer of that too. So again, we're able to bring these other solutions online very easily by creating these products. And then also, it's not necessarily integrations, it's also data acquisition. So Aramark, we're at, mostly everybody knows us from sporting events. So NFL, MLB, there's a lot of transactions, a lot of data flowing through there. And, we're bringing that information in, and not only doing it for our own analysis, we're also giving it back to the clients so they can take that and actually consume that. So, the platform allows us to provide that flexibility And when I'm talking about 100 million transactions, I'm not even counting those types of transactions, because I consider that traditional type of data ingestion and provisioning, those type of things.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I think it's important to also understand the need for the exposed API and the governance around an API when you're dealing with the SOX, with auditing requirements, and you're dealing with pricing requirements, and you're dealing with SEC filing requirements. While I want to push some data into my ERP, right? It can't be without the ERP application saying, no, you've just broken a rule. You just broken a pricing rule. My pricing engine sits in my ERP, and hey, sales, you can't submit an order on behalf of your customer without following my pricing engine. So having an exposed API and having rules around error handling and which application governs that transaction is super important. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, well, thanks for the additional color. So speaking of rules, not necessarily in architecture content, but here's a question. Tell us about your architecture, what you built at a high level. And Carrie, would you like to go first on this one?
Yeah, I honestly would not say ours is super complicated. I really wanted to pick or have WD-40 Company specify a group of strategic applications in which we would integrate. So for us, it's our ERP, it's our CRM, it's a supply demand planning tool called Atlas. There's talk about expanding that into a quality system to have advanced quality, and then pulling in our HR system as well. So from an overall future perspective, it's really those 5 applications.
Good. Any other architecture descriptions? Looking at you, Jonathan. And just to warn, we're getting down to our last 5 minutes, and there's a couple other questions I'm just dying to get in. So if you want to give us a quick view of it, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, our architecture is actually quite simplified compared to the other 2, because again, we're dealing with a discrete set of data in a specific domain. And I think that we've as Brian indicated, most of our integration work is about updates between systems about workers, or we're not doing ERP or sales transactions. So for us, we have the HR system. We've got SnapLogic as our integration platform. We do build some basic applications that are primarily workflow, with a UI around it, using SnapLogic as much of the back end and an analytics piece on Workday. But other than that, I don't think there's anything too earth-shattering or shocking about our architecture, and that's on purpose. We try to keep it simple within this specific space.
Understood. And so with the time we have left, which is about 4.5 minutes, we have to ask the best practices question. Everyone just lives for best practices, tips. I'm going to sort of combine the last 2 questions together, which is, with what you know now, what would you do different versus what you knew before, or best practices. So what wisdom would you like to impart for everyone to think about as they go about their enterprise automation journey?
That's easy
Brian,
for me to. Oh yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Brian, you want to go first?
I mean, my guidance would be pretty basic, right? Keep it simple. Understand where your data gravity is. So we have a pretty broad net infrastructure. It's a hybrid infrastructure. So as you start to think about what is your implementation, understand where your data gravity is today, 6 months, 12 months out, because you may make decisions that you're going to regret. So, you have to kind of plan this out and think about where you're going to be in 12 months. And then focus on, as you move to the cloud, or if you're in the cloud, Jonathan kind of hit the nail on the head. Focus on PaaS services, software as a service. Infrastructure as a service is appealing, but there's a lot of buried cost in there that you'll learn to regret, right? So, and then think about any solution you're thinking about. Think about how the elasticity of that environment. Does the vendor product provide you the ability to scale as your demand scales, or scale up when you need the demand, but then scale it back when you're not leveraging it all?
All right. On demand, that's where it's at. Carrie, why don't you take a shot?
Well, I mean, I would very much agree with my colleague here who said, like, we need a service and we need a platform that allows us to scale up from a strategic vendor perspective, because we're just not pulling an in-house team to do those types of things. But like, I would also say, do your due diligence. For us, this is a great platform. For other companies, like, it may not be as simplistic. Companies that do a lot of M&As, like, maybe it's just not the right tool for you. Companies that have a huge development team that's very much invested in that, then maybe there's a way of pulling in over time this product, right? Like, but I will say, to promote kind of Snap Logic, is I think you guys make every investment in your customers to make sure they're getting the right tool for them. And that has been my experience. And so for that, I just say thank you.
Oh, well, hey, thank you. I'll let the engineers know. I know they're excited to hear that kind of thing. All right. So, Jonathan, and I noticed no one has said what you would do differently, but nonetheless, we still have those two kind of like combined. What would you do differently, or go for best practices? And we got about a minute. So rapid fire. I would love to hear it.
Yeah, I can talk fast. I think that in terms of our best practices, I would say, if nothing else, understand your data. I remember years ago when I was consulting, and I had a client who absolutely wanted a data warehouse back when that was the big hot thing. And we kept asking, so for what? They said, well, we need one. I said, well, tell me 5 business questions you want to be able to answer. And they looked at us as if, we were speaking French. What are you talking about? They couldn't even come up with a question because they didn't know. It just was technology for its own sake. So I think for me, I would say, understand your data, what it is you want to do with it, and understand the business value that your stakeholders want to get out of it. This is how you can really go about establishing credibility for what it is that you build. Focus on a minimum viable product. You've heard Brian mention product again and again. Go small, be focused, go with speed to business value, and work on rapid deployment, proof of concept, to show again and again that this is interesting stuff, and use that as the way to build, incremental business value using your integration platform. That's what we've done with SnapLogic. That's something I wish we had known on day one with it. I think we would have had a very different adoption strategy. But nevertheless, it's realizing that has helped us to be pretty successful with it. And more than anything else, it allows you to quickly establish, like I said, the confidence from your stakeholders on the business side, on the technology side, and then within your team to say, look, we can do this, and we don't have to be integration experts, but we're on a journey. We've got a path established to get there as the subject matter experts and such, and we can leverage this in a way that's going to make us successful.
Well, that sounds like a great tip to end on, and it all can be summarized. Have an end goal in mind, and have that plan ready. Start small, start simple, be simple, but go after it for quick execution. So I like to take this moment to once again thank you, our esteemed panelists. We have Brian Murphy with Aramark, we have Carrie Craig with WD-40 Company, and we have Jonathan Howe with Sony. Thank you, all of you. I really appreciate your time very much, and I'm sure all of our listeners did too. So thank you. You guys have a great day.
All right, thank you.
Or evening in your case, Brian. Thank you for hanging in there late in your day.
All right, take care.
All right, bye-bye.